Mr. Randolph liked Rose, that little smile she had, how she was still sweet when life had tried so hard to make her bitter. It wasn't any of his business what she did in her trailer, but those strangers, the writer and his smart-ass sidekick, looked like trouble, and they'd been in there for hours, way past her normal bedtime. He reached for the phone and called the sheriff's station. For decades, the darkness that wore Barbara Jagger's skin slept fitfully in the dark place that was its home and prison. It was hungry and in pain. It dreamed of its nights of glory when the poet's writing had called it from the depths and given it a brief, terrible taste of power and freedom. The rock stars had stirred it from the deep sleep the poet had sunk it back to in the end. When it sensed the writer on the ferry, it opened its eyes. Nightingale stared through the broken studio window into the dark woods. He turned around, started to walk out, but Maine grabbed his arm. "Young man, you almost shot me. You don't shoot off rounds at people like that. What's the matter with you?" Nightingale shook his arm free, marched out. His cheeks burned with rage and humiliation. Sarah trusted her gut, and her gut said Agent Nightingale was an asshole. He felt wrong. And it wasn't just the smell of stale booze. It was in the way he flashed his badge, pulled rank, the look in his eyes when he wanted answers. Where was Alan Wake? What was this about an accident? Where was his wife? And most importantly, why did she let Wake go? He wouldn't answer her questions. Federal business was all he'd say. The pipe wrenched itself loose from the bridge's steel framework. Wrapped in darkness, it floated in midair, twitching. For a moment, I didn't understand what I was looking at. The heavy object lurched at me with impossible force. I threw myself out of the way, but just barely. When I turned my flashlight on it, it shook in a dark rage before it flew at me again. I slammed the door shut right in his smug face. He pleaded for me to open the door. True to form, the asshole actually thought I would obey. I had no sympathy left, no guilt either, not for him. I took a moment to savor the scream. I bet I had a smile on my face. It was all that I had time for. The dark presence was inside the lodge with me. Rose didn't know how the strange old lady got in her trailer, and she looked wrong somehow. The woman showed her teeth in an approximation of a smile and traced a finger down Rose's cheek. "Pretty girl," she said. Rose felt as if she was falling asleep, but her knees didn't buckle. The crone spoke in a whisper, her words ice cold and dark in Rose's ear. Touched by the dark presence, Rose was lost in a dreamland where everything was drawn in black and gray crayons. The old lady had promised her that all her wishes would come true. She would be Alan Wake's muse. She was smiling so hard it hurt her face. She crushed a bottle full of sleeping pills into the coffee. Deep down inside, she was screaming in terror. Danny had stepped out, but what stumbled back in was something else. Something alien, a monster. Walter tried to kill it, first with his fists, then a chair. It wouldn't die. Instead, it kept coming, unaffected by the beating it had taken. After Walter managed to kick it down the cellar stairs, fear took over. He ran, got behind the wheel, gunned the engine. The booze wouldn't make him forget, but he knew he had to try. The bulldozer's engine roared to life. Mud and rocks flew as it fought for traction. It crashed through the concrete wall and landed heavily in the yard. If it were an animal, it would have shaken its head after the impact, fixed its eyes on me, and charged. Of course, it had no head, nor eyes. Shadows crawled on its form, twisting it into a monster. Then, it came for me. Even after all this time, hearing the Night Springs theme caused a surge of conflicting emotions in me. It'd been my first real writing gig. Barry had known a guy who knew a guy, and suddenly I'd been a semi-regular writer on the show. I'd always been ashamed of the job. Felt it was trash. I'd wanted to be an artist, a novelist. I'd been naive back then. It had taken a long time to learn to be proud of the work. With Nightingale gone and the night wind blowing in through the broken studio window, Maine stared at Sarah. The sheriff looked away. Maine's voice shook with barely controlled anger. That boy's doing more drinking than thinking. I hope you know what you're doing, Sarah. He's got a sickness in his eyes. You take my word for it. He wants Wake for a reason, and it's not for anything good. When Thomas Zane fell for Barbara Jagger, it happened fast. She was young, vibrant, and beautiful, full of life. He had never been a very happy man, and without any seeming effort, she had changed all that. Zane felt good for the first time in his life. Everything she did was another piece of a jigsaw puzzle he hadn't even known he'd been missing. And best of all, she made the words flow, strong and sharp. She was his muse. Some of the taken retained echoes of their former selves, but these were just the nerve twitches of a dead thing. Nothing remained but a shell covered and filled with darkness. In most cases, these puppets were enough for the purposes of the dark presence. But for anything more elaborate, as with the writer, it was different. It needed his mind. And so rather than taking him over completely, it merely touched him. I stared through the bars of the jail cell. Barry stood behind me, swaying on his feet, looking as ill as I felt. Agent Nightingale stood on the other side of the bars with Sheriff Breaker. Nightingale had a stack of manuscript pages in his hand. He seemed unhinged as he gloated. Well, I've got you now, Raymond Chandler. It's all here, all the evidence, including conspiracy to murder a federal agent. Things were never as simple in real life as in fiction. I had lost count of the times I had wished there'd be a clear reason for my writer's block, something to fight, something to lash out on. There wasn't. I was filled with doubt. I was nothing like the hero in my books. Alex Casey had gone through his life with single-minded determination, never wavering from his goal. Even now, I was angry at myself, angry at Alice, angry at Barry. I was fumbling and I had no plan. Even behind the closed doors and curtains of his grimy room at the Majestic, the local motel, Nightingale could feel the locals' eyes on him, the unrelenting pressure of their judgment. He forced it out of his mind. For all he knew, they could all be under Wake's spell already. You do what you have to do to get the job done. He took comfort from the bottle in his hand. Please, he thought, just let me get through this. Maud had checked all of Stucky's rental cabins. There had been no sign of the Wakes. It was dark when he'd found their car parked at the end of the road by Cauldron Lake. It made no sense. They must have taken a wrong turn, but there was no sign of them, and the car had been there for hours already. Frustrated, Mott stood on the rotten ruin of the footbridge that had once led to Diver's Isle before it sank beneath the waves years ago. The boss wouldn't be happy. I tried to hold on to Alice, but her form melted away. I was losing control. Dr. Hartman stood in her place. I wanted to hit him, but my arms were jelly. He smiled. It was a reassuring smile, and I hated him for it. I had to give you a sedative. Don't fight it. You went through another rough period. Right now, it's very important that you stay calm. We don't want you to have another episode. You're a patient at my clinic. Have been for a while now. For Mott, spying on the writer on the ferry had been a disappointment. His boss had made Wake out to be something special, but Mott hadn't been impressed. He'd gotten a good long look at the wife, though, and he liked what he saw. Mott had fantasized about goading Wake into a fight, but it hadn't happened. Still, he'd get his chance to see if the writer had anything in him. He'd been promised as much. The hunters were big, thick-set men, confident and at home in the woods. They were feeling good, running on beer, ghost stories, and camaraderie late into the night. It did them no good, as they were taken by the dark presence, sucked deep into a darkness far worse than any ghost story they ever told or heard. Doc sat down heavily. He examined Barry and Rose. Barry was already recovering. Rose was another story. She was conscious, but she was barely present, almost delirious, disturbed, touched in the head, they used to say. It wasn't the first time Doc had seen someone in such a state, but it had been over 30 years. Doc poured himself a stiff drink. He hadn't forgotten a thing. I lifted the page in front of my eyes and read it. In it, I lifted the page in front of my eyes and read it. In it, I lifted the page in front of my eyes and read it. In it, I lifted the page in front of my eyes and read it. In it, I lifted the page in front of my eyes and read it. In it, I lifted the page in front of my eyes and read it. Lightning flashed behind the windows of Cauldron Lake Lodge. Tor Anderson laughed and held the steel hammer above his head. Nurse Sinclair was trying to calm him down without success. Tor grinned madly and shouted, "My hammer's up. Here's a friendly poke from Molnir, wench." He brought the hammer down with all his might on Sinclair's head. "We're on a comeback tour, baby." Previously on Alan Wake, Alice has been kidnapped.
Alan, Please help me.
Alice?
You'll do exactly what I say if you ever want to see your wife again.
I can't tell anyone except my agent Barry.
Damn it, Barry, they'll kill her!
You're my best friend, and I'm worried that you're not right in the head.
The ransom is a manuscript I supposedly wrote that's coming true before my eyes.
It happened just the way it was on that page. So dark.
I have found only a few scattered pages.
I want the entire manuscript.
The deadline is in 2 days.
I found Mr. Wake's pages.
Good girl.
How the hell did she get her hands on the manuscript anyway?
I don't know. She's resourceful. I told you were too hard on her. Listen, I found out all sorts of interesting stuff while I was digging around.
Yeah.
Mr. Wake, it's Sheriff Breaker. We have an FBI agent here, Agent Nightingale.
FBI?
He's anxious to see you. You'd better come to the station.
Okay, I'll be right over, Sheriff. Let's make this quick, huh?
Help you folks? Name's Randolph. I'm the manager.
We're looking for Rose. Works as a waitress down at the diner.
Rose, sure. Nice girl. Who wants to know?
I'm Alanu Wakeovi.
The writer, huh? I heard on the radio you were visiting. Well, I'll show you her trailer. That Rose, she's a nice girl. Always pays her rent on time.
As I was saying, Al, I found all sorts of weird stuff from the newspapers archives.
The trailer park where Rose lives is a cozy place that recently had a bit of a shock when a sailing boat picked up by a tornado crashed in the middle of 2 trailers. This is a location that for a long time looked like it was not going to make it in the final game, but I'm glad it did because I think it's one of those places that helps define the character and style of the game in a visual way.
Anyway,
when we went out photo shooting along the Pacific Northwest area, we came across many trailer parks, and we have plenty of material for them. So I think that really shows in the authenticity of this location.
So much so that the place came to be called Diver's Isle. But the volcano under the lake erupted in 1970, and Zane went down with the island.
Yeah, how about that? It was there in the morning, as if it had fallen from the sky. But it would take a tornado to lift something like that. We're damn lucky it didn't crush any of the trailers. Come on, mister. I'll take you to Rose's trailer.
Better. A local girl, Barbara Jagger, drowned in Cauldron Lake just a week earlier. They were lovers.
Sure, Jagger's a local spook story. The Scratching Hag comes for you in the dark. Childish stuff like that.
Anyway, Al, I'm just getting to the best part. All of the articles about this stuff were written by Cynthia Weaver. I asked around, and she's that crazy bag lady you met.
What, the lamp lady? She can be a little loopy, but she's not homeless or anything.
Yeah, anyway, she knew both Jagger and Zane before they both died, and she had some kind of a breakdown.
Well, mister, this here's Rose's trailer. You mind me asking what you want with her?
We're just here to talk to her, pal.
Welcome to... Oh dear, Mr. Wake. I'm so glad you're here.
Rose, you have my manuscript?
Oh yes. Yes. Please, come in.
Hey, this is really good.
Rose,
Yes,
my manuscript. I really need it.
I understand. I know what you need. A muse to inspire you.
Oh, for Barry? She doesn't have anything.
Yeah, hey, Al? Al, what's... Oh...
Barry! What? What?
It's coming for you, hiding in my barber's skin. I'm too weak to stop it. You must turn the lights on.
I promised I'd come visit you and your lovely wife. You must finish what you started. I insist.
You must turn the lights on. Turn the light on.
Back to work, boy.
I felt nauseous, hungover. Only anger kept me going. I can't tell reality from dream anymore, but it seems I have an imaginary editor to help me. She's an old woman in a funeral dress. I call her Barbara Jagger. She's very strict. I'm writing faster and faster. My manuscript is being heavily revised. The edits are getting very aggressive, and each day there's less of me and more of her. I hate it, but I know she's right. She promises me I can save Alice this way. She knows more of this than I do. About the complex incantation I'm attempting. About this place. She's worked with another writer under similar circumstances, Thomas Zane. The genre of the story seems to be shifting. It's turning into a horror story. I'm getting close. I can feel it. Rose took a day from me. I had less than 12 hours left to meet the kidnapper. All I could do was get Barry into the car, work something out once I got on the road. Barry was out of it. He was way too heavy to carry.
You're right. I deserve more money. I'm so handsome.
Welcome to the Oh Dear Diner. What can I get you today? Coffee?
I couldn't work up much hate for Rose. Something had used her to get to me and left its mark.
First refill is free. Milk and sugar on the counter there. Would you like to hear today's specials? Thank you. A nice day. Come back soon.
My gun and flashlight were gone. I'd have to find a way to get Barry into the car as quickly as possible. There was no time to waste.
The Dark Presence is the main adversary in our game, and I wouldn't necessarily call it evil, but it is completely alien to our world, and that may pretty much be the same thing. We don't really want to explain the dark presence in too much detail. We kind of want it to remain a mystery, but let me say this much. It's definitely not human. It doesn't think the way we do. A good example of this would be when Wake actually escapes from the cabin, and he actually just sits there and writes the whole thing into the story, and the dark presence is right there, and it just doesn't understand what's going on. It doesn't work on that level of logic. On the other hand, it can be very devious. For example, it has no problems whatsoever using Alice and Rose against Wake in a very, very sort of, contrived manner, and it works very well too. We talked quite a bit about the dark presence being weak in the beginning of the game, and that's true as far as it goes, but it only refers to the foothold it has in our world. Now, it is strong. It is very, very strong and very, very big in its own world.
I just stepped outside to catch a breath of fresh air. Let me tell you, the weather's getting heavy. Nights like this make me especially glad I'm here talking to you and not home in bed. Once the weather takes a turn like this, I can't sleep at all. It's all tangled bed sheets and dark thoughts, punctuated by the occasional plunge into nightmare. Is it just me? Well, perhaps it is. But I hope I can make the night a little bit easier to get through. Caller, you're on KBF FM.
Hey, hi, it's Walt Snyder.
What's on your mind, Walt?
Well, I ain't the way you are, but, I can't sleep either, I just been staring out the window here, trying to make sense of it all, but, I ain't been drinking either,
Well, you sound like a man with a problem, Walt.
I had argument with Danny, Danny, and, then I got in trouble with the law, and, I'm just,
I heard something like that, Walt.
Yeah, well, Danny's my best friend, and, they let me out on bail today. And now I'm just alone here at the window, waiting. Man, and there's something in the air tonight, man.
I was just outside looking up at the sky above our broadcast tower thinking the same thing. What are you waiting for, Walt?
I don't know. Something's gonna happen. I think I better go.
Well, Walt, maybe...
No, thanks, Pat.
Well, good luck to you, Walt. Hang in there. Let's take a little break, folks. This weather's really something else, huh?
How can I be sure you will walk away? Why'd you love deception? Love you this way. How can I be sure?
Oh, you're gonna get it now. God knows what you've done to that poor girl.
This is Agent Nightingale, FBI! Get him up, Hemingway! You're under arrest! You move a muscle, I'll unload right in your goddamn face! Stay right where you are, Slade!
What are? I'm standing right here, you goddamn maniac!
I hated to leave Barry behind, but there was no way I'd miss my appointment with the kidnapper.
Give it up, Mr. Wake! Come on! Make it easy!
Get after him! Don't let him get away! Move it! Move it! Move it! I'll have your chance if you let him get away!
Come on, guys. We need to head him off.
Fired at Wake, and he didn't have a gun. You almost hit a civilian instead. Over.
Sheriff, Wake's running. I'm giving chase. I don't have time for this.
Well, make the time. You can't just go shooting at people in my town. Over.
I'm a federal agent pursuing a fugitive. You want to discuss my methods, Sheriff? Make an appointment. Over.
You stay right where you are, Agent Nightingale. I'm on my way. Out.
The suspect was last sighted running along the gorge that leads westward from the trailer park. All units are advised that the suspect may be armed. Approach with caution. James out.
Search the area. Stay sharp. This way. Over here.
This horror was everywhere I went, circling me. The cops didn't stand a chance. They were after a writer, not a monster.
I've lost contact with most of the men you assigned to me. It's Wake's doing.
Wait, are you seriously telling me that geek writer just took out my deputies? Are you kidding? I mean, have you seen this guy? He wears a tweed jacket. Over.
He's the guy we're chasing. If it's not him, who then? Bigfoot? Over.
I don't know yet, but I'm not in the habit of jumping to conclusions. That tends to come back and bite you in the ass. Out.
This is James. Mulligan, Thornton, come in. Over.
Thornton here. James, we got both Wheeler and Rose in custody.
They didn't put up a fight or anything. Why, they were... Hey, what you... Come on! Sit down and give me that. Jane, Mulligan here. Over. Go ahead, Mulligan. Over. We got Wheeler and Rose here. Wheeler's drunk or hopped up on something. Speaking of which, that Fed had a pretty distinctive whiff of Oda Scotch about him, you know what I mean. Over. I don't have anything on that, Deputy Mulligan. Over. Well, whatever. Anyway, Rose is just being plain weird here. You better get Doc in to take a look at both of them. Over. Gotcha. You better get them here quickly. The Fed's gonna want to interview Wheeler. Over. Oh yeah, I bet it does. Looks like they have a lot in common. Mulligan out.
I could see the lights of the radio station in the distance. I imagined that the broadcast tower in the distance was part of the local radio station. Maine seemed like a decent guy. Perhaps he could give me directions to the coal mine. Unnatural shadows clung to the gate. The darkness that was after me was trying to stop me. I wouldn't get through without a light. The old generator conked out. I'd have to see if I could fix it and try again. It took me a moment to recognize the flashback grenades. They were an ideal weapon for my situation.
Team 1, come in.
Here we see one of the most useful tools that the gameplay designers have. We call it beds, or bringing enemies to the scene. It started off as a simple spawning system, but as time went on, it evolved into something bigger. It actually now incorporates build-up as well. You hear the whispers and sounds that the darkness creates, and, well, the darkness itself actually appearing in the forest. It hides the enemies when they actually get close to you. On top of that, we have a reveal system, which shows the first enemy attacking you, but we do it only once per combat. After that, you're on your own.
I hope Maine could lend me a car to get to the coal mine.
We don't see a lot of Pat Maine in the game, but actually he has a considerable presence. One of the problems with Alan Wake was that we really wanted to maintain that small town atmosphere, but that's very hard to do when, you don't actually spend a lot of time in the small town itself. A familiar and dependable radio will solve that problem. Also, I think R.J. Allison, who plays Pat Maine, did a wonderful job. He really nails the character, and it's so great to be alone in the dark and then hear that warm and dependable voice.
Well, thank you very much for that compassionate viewpoint, Lorna.
How can I be sure?
surprise, the famous writer Alan Wake just walked in. Folks, I'm going to see if I can talk him into an interview.
Come on in, Mr. Wake. It looks like Mr. Wake. Oh, I'm so glad you could find the time to do this, Mr. Wake.
Nowhere to run now, Dan Brown. You back away from me. Don't hurt.
Whoa. Everyone calm down. Put the gun down. We're all friends here, right?
Cool your jets, Nightingale. We got him. What the hell's the matter with you? There's a civilian in there.
I'll get you yet, even if it kills me, you hear me? You hear me, H.P. Lovecraft?
I had fallen off so many cliffs it was ridiculous. That's what you get for naming a book The Sudden Stop. It was probably good I hadn't had the chance to tell Maine where I was going.
Here we have another really well set up journey. The train depot and the bridge in the distance well visible from early on. As an interesting side note, this whole area was originally just a minor branch, not even a branch. Alan Wake just basically had to get a car from the forest and continue towards the mining museum. With months of iteration and looking at the possibilities given by the environment, we found out that this area could have lots of poltergeist events, could have hidden routes and so forth. The bridge and the train depot all appearing far later in their development.
There was no sensible reason for the power company work lights to be here. It was almost as if they'd been left for someone like me to use. Hello?
The most stubborn man I've ever met.
Alice? Alice?
Alan. I'm so afraid. Keeps me in the dark. Please help me. I look at you, Alan, and it's not you. Something else. Looking out from behind your eyes.
Alice, I'm here.
I'm so alone here. It's all gonna go to hell. You need to be careful. Cooperate.
The connection had been terrible, but that wasn't the only thing that hadn't been right with the call. She sounded wrong somehow, but she had called me. I could see a railway bridge up ahead, and a warehouse of some sort on the opposite shore. I hoped I could find...
Everybody knows the movie Poltergeist, but I wouldn't say that it was the origin for this idea. This game is about possession. It's about the dark presence taking over everything in the world. It started off with humans, and, well, in the design, the inanimate objects were the next logical step. One of the hardest things to do was to convey intent. The objects don't have any body language, unlike the Taken. How we ended up with the current feature was that the lead writer actually encountered a problematic physical object. It flickered around the terrain erratically, and you really couldn't tell what is going to happen next. And that ended up being a real feature. And here you can see the result.
The darkness that was pursuing me was growing stronger, and it was taking over everything in its path. As a teenager, just starting to get interested in writing, Stephen King had been a source of inspiration to me. I thought about all the inanimate objects that had come to life in his books. No one is safe in a good horror story, certainly not the protagonist. That's what makes them fun. This was anything but. The darkness could possess anything, and it was getting closer.
Did you call 911?
The darkness can take over almost anything. That includes machinery like vehicles. In the next scene you will see the bulldozer attacking you, and it might be familiar to you from demos that have been shown in different shows before. I would like to say that plenty of thought and research went into this, but the fact is that it was basically just a lucky test when we fooled around with the AI and physics. And here you can see the results.
We take the facts of our existence for granted, unaware that they are merely a thin veneer of desperate self-delusion, covering a vast cosmos of madness and horror. All too often, the stars are right. In Night Springs. Tonight's episode, a family occasion. Journalist Alvin Derleth's trip to study the local customs of an insular community in Night Springs has been less than successful. Until tonight.
Well, I'm glad you changed your minds about this. Ancient customs, local mythology. My editor loves this kind of stuff.
Well, Mr. Derleth, we don't want to feel like we're on exhibition. But you have demonstrated the seriousness of your intent.
Oh, I am serious. Really, just do your thing. I'll stay out of your way and observe.
Actually, I thought you could assist us. I'm afraid we are a man short. It would provide you with an intimate perspective.
Could I really?
Of course, Mr. Derleth.
Well, I guess that's the least What would I have to do?
Oh, here. Let me show you with a kiss.
What did you...
Oh, Mr. Derleth, you have well pleased Nixie Perka, the dweller in flesh. Your body shall host his 1,000 young, and all shall be glory. Shh, darling, be calm. Shh.
Alvin Derleth learned a harsh lesson. If you go looking for mythology, it may come looking for you. And such quests always bear fruit. In Night Springs.
never been this glad to see the sunrise. I had a couple of hours to get to the coal mine. The coal mine wasn't far now. Today, I would meet the kidnapper, and he would give me Alice. I wouldn't give him any other choice. A drowning man will clutch at a straw.
This daytime driving sequence is great to have in the final game, especially considering that it was a source of debate earlier on. It's fairly hard to actually see this kind of sequences, are they actually working or not, before we have the final environment, the mood, the sounds and so forth. Of course now it is great to have in the final game. It provides a very nice change of pace in the middle of episode 3, and it provides a great showcase for our technology, our views, and also it's great to see the environment that you usually see in the night, covered in shadows and in fog, in its full glory.
The feel of history and roots is somehow very present in the whole Pacific Northwest area. It's one of those things that lends the unique feel to this region. This was once a very inaccessible and thus isolated region, but in the turn of the 19th and 20th century, as railroads started getting built, it was suddenly connected to the rest of the country. This greatly benefited industries like mining, for example, because now ore could easily be transported across vast distances. Towards 1960s and 1970s, mining steadily declined, but this area is still filled with all sorts of landmarks and reminders of that once blooming industry. To me, these kinds of things really matter because they are the reason behind why things are and look the way they are. So, long story short, decaying structures like old train carts and mining structures and tipple buildings are really a part of the history of this area. And that's all the reason we needed to include one of those beautiful tipple buildings as a location in the game. As many of its real-world counterparts, it serves now as a museum.
was early. I was supposed to meet the kidnapper at noon in the main building. The coal mine was quiet. It was a museum now. I didn't want to go outside. Cops had to be looking for me. The noon sun turned the place into a sauna. The day dragged on. Different scenarios ran through my mind. Ways of how I'd torture the kidnapper to get Alice back. Or the different horrible things he could have done to her. I imagined her dead. I had no way of knowing she was still alive. It was killing me. I was running on blind hope. It was all a waste of time. The bastard never showed up.
Wake!
Where the hell are you?
Change of plans. You know where Mirror Peak is? It's a big mountain north of where you are. You follow the path from the mine, you can't miss it. There's a lookout point there. I'll be waiting.
I'm through being jerked around by
You
you.
want to see your wife alive? Because if you do, you better watch what you say to me. Do we understand each other?
I want to talk to Alice.
Yeah, and I want the manuscript. Don't keep me waiting, Wake.
Hello? Hello! Ah! I'm gonna kill him!
I had to get to Mirror Peak. It was close, maybe closer than ever before.
Okay, now this whole kidnapping thing is a red herring, of course. It's just an attempt to manipulate Wake and to get him to deliver the manuscript. The so-called kidnapper, Mott, well, he doesn't have Alice. He doesn't know where Alice is, and neither does Dr. Hartman, the guy who's hired Mott. But they do know that Wake will do anything to get Alice back, so, you know, they use her. They're nice people like that. The problem is that Wake doesn't have the manuscript at all. He doesn't know where it is. He has a couple of pages, but of course, that's not enough. So, they're lying to Wake about having Alice, and Wake is lying to them about having the manuscript, and nobody has much of anything. It doesn't end very well for Mott, you know, who is going to get his in a couple of minutes, well, no, a little longer. And Dr. Hartman doesn't have such a great day either. No, what can I say? Karma's a bitch.
The only way to reach the hillside ahead was to go through the building. I had to find a way to avoid electrocution. There was no way the flashbang grenades were standard power company equipment.
Our technology enables us to have a set of ready-made landscape types that tile seamlessly with each other and can be used to quickly lay out large sections of terrain, instantly creating realistic landscapes. These biotypes, as we call them, contain lots of different information about the resulting shape of the terrain. Things like what the ground is comprised of, is it mud, rocks, or grass, and what grows on it, different kind of foliage and trees, and also its bumpiness. So we don't manually build every square meter of forest that there is in the game, but instead focus our efforts on creating these biotypes so realistic that they can be used to cover a patch of terrain of almost any size and still look realistic. We then cover the terrain with patches of different biotypes that go together very well before finally going over the area with a precision polish.
The dark presence was moving ahead of me in the same direction I was going. A cold feeling settled itself in the pit of my stomach. Was it going for Alice?
The graveyard shift may cause cancer.
The place was dead, a ghost town. Had been for decades, maybe a century. I needed a key for the door. Anything outside of writing is a struggle. I feel ill. I managed to make my way downstairs. There's a shoebox filled with books and papers by Thomas Zane. It's very hard to focus, but I managed to read some of it. He's a poet, and a good one. He writes of muses and creators summoning fabulous things from a magic lake, using his powers to shape the world of a realm of gods and dreams and demons, dark things that wait for a chance to slip through, wearing the flesh of men as disguise. Zane writes about himself, his girlfriend being taken over by a dark presence, about growing scared of the lake. Zane believes it's a mirror to the gaping void of darkness above, where some Lovecraftian presence lurks. I crawl back upstairs. I'll borrow these things for my story. They ring true. They fit. The kidnapper had sent me a text. The message was full of spelling errors and insults. It was telling me to hurry up. Birds. Birds.
We chose birds as our only enemy type. The main reason being that the birds actually bring something new to the table, an extra dimension. We try to think through the whole package of the player experience. Player needs to look down for bear traps, look ahead for taken, and look up for the birds.
to make my way up this mine shaft in order to go
The guys
on.
who did this
Maybe
mine
the
puzzle,
machinery could help me
Antti and
with that.
Tiago, did a really amazing job here. This is again one of the cases where we started with a very, very low-key design requirement, just something to occupy the player for a moment. But with iteration, looking at what works, what not, we actually got this this amazing sequence which does what it's supposed to do. It looks complex, it looks imposing, but it's very intuitive to play, and I hope you actually enjoy going through it.
have to make my way up this mine shaft in order to
The
go
guys
on.
who did this
Maybe
mine
the
puzzle,
machinery could help me
Antti and
with
Tiago,
that.
did a really amazing job here. This is again one of the cases where we started with a very, very low-key design requirement, just something to occupy the player for a moment. But with iteration, looking at what works, what not, we actually got this amazing sequence which does what it's supposed to do. It looks complex, it looks imposing, but it's very intuitive to play, and I hope you actually enjoy going through it.
In a similar vein to how we handle the different types of terrain with biotypes, we have a preset system for weather styles as well. The game engine lets us control numerous parameters, things like cloudiness, wind, rain, and also lighting parameters, things like color, intensity and blooming, to create truly stunning weather effects. Using this technology, we have created a palette of ready-made weathers that can be called upon at any time, so really it is weather on demand at the push of a button. Each level has its own, or sometimes many, different styles of ambience, and so their own mood.
could see Cauldron Lake. I thought I could make out the spot where the island and the cabin had been. There was a light near it. It had to be a boat. I was close now. I had to get there fast. I dreaded what I would find.
Wait! Are you? Wait!
Hey, I'm here! I'm coming!
No! Get away! Sorry. Please, it's late. The boss didn't know who he was messing with. I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know. We don't have his wife. We don't know where she is. She's probably drowned. We just said we had her to make a play ball. You see? To get him writing for us. Please. Please. Oh. I'm sorry. Please don't hurt me. Ah! Ah!
I was cut from her belly with a Stanley knife. My daddy did a jig with a drunk midwife. Who's that yonder all in flames, dragging behind him a sack of chains? Who's that yonder all in flames? Well, up jumped the devil and he staked his claim on me. Start, doomed to play the villain's part. I was the baddest Johnny in the apple cart. My blood was blacker than the chambers of a dead nun's heart. Who's that milling round the courthouse steps? Nail on my face to the hedge and fence. Who's that milling round the courthouse steps? Up jumped the devil and off we crept. Oh no, where could I go with my hump of trouble and my sack of woe? To the digs and the deserts of Mexico, where my neck was safer from the lynching rope. Who's that yonder laughing at me like I was the brunt of some hilarity? who's that younger laughing at me? Well, I'll jump the devil, 1, 2, 3. We got